The first 50 seconds of the recording were nothing but static. White noise rolled across the screen in uneven waves, like the signal itself was struggling to decide whether it wanted to exist. Then came a sudden flicker, black, then white, then a harsh green diagnostic overlay. And finally, sound. A breathing radio channel. Still no seismic instability in this quadrant, a voice said. Calm. Controlled. Professional. Proceed with caution, Cole. Private contractor Evan Cole adjusted the lamp mounted on his helmet and exhaled slowly. The breath fogged the inside of his visor for half a second before the suit cleared it automatically. Copy that, he answered. His boots crunched against fractured stone as he moved deeper into the excavation tunnel. The site was supposed to be dead, abandoned centuries ago, maybe longer. The official report called it a collapsed mining network. Unofficially, no one could agree on what had actually been dug out of this place. Because nothing on the scans made sense. No mineral signatures. No structural symmetry. No geological consistency. Just a void beneath the earth that seemed to resist interpretation. Evan stopped at the edge of a wide chamber. His helmet lights swept across the space. And for the first time in his career, he forgot to speak. The chamber wasn't natural. That much was obvious. The walls curved inward in smooth, layered arcs, like something had been melted rather than carved. Black stone, or something that only resembled stone, reflected his light in dull, oily ripples. At the center of the room sat an object. Perfectly still. Evans had struggled to identify it. No match found. No material classification. Unknown object. He stepped forward anyway. Control, he said quietly. His voice sounded too loud in the chamber. I think we've got a relic. It's not human-made. Possibly pre-industrial, but the structure doesn't match any known era. There was a pause in his earpiece. Too long. Then, describe it. Evan swallowed. It looks like an egg. That wasn't quite right. But it was the closest word his brain could find. The object was roughly the size of a motorcycle engine block, resting upright in a shallow indentation in the floor. Its surface wasn't smooth, but it also wasn't rough. It shifted depending on the angle you looked at it, like it was refusing to be defined by light. Faint lines of illumination pulsed beneath its surface in slow intervals. Like a heartbeat. Is it organic? Control asked. I don't know, Evan said. It's reacting to thermal readings. But there's no biological signature. No carbon baseline. It shouldn't be alive. He moved closer despite himself. His training screamed at him to stop. Every protocol in his suit quietly updated in the corner of his vision. Do not touch. Do not interact. Mark and retreat. But the object didn't feel dangerous. That was the worst part. It felt aware. As Evan circled it, the pulsing light inside the shell shifted. Not randomly. Not rhythmically either. Intentionally. Like it was tracking him. Control, he said again, quieter now. I need confirmation. This thing is responding to presence. No answer came. Just static. Evan tapped his comm twice. Control? Do you read? Still nothing. The tunnel suddenly felt smaller. The air recycling unit in his suit hissed softly, louder than it should have. He stepped closer until he was standing directly in front of the object. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then his glove display flickered. Temperature spike. Then drop. Then spike again. The egg, or whatever it was, shifted slightly. Not enough for a human eye to register at first. But Evan saw it. He froze. No, he whispered. The object moved again. This time, unmistakably. A faint crack of light spread along its surface, like something inside had pressed outward just enough to test the boundary of its prison. Evan took a step back. His boot scraped stone. The sound echoed too loudly. The chamber answered with silence. And then, a pulse. Not sound. Not vibration. Something deeper. It hit his suit first, spiking every sensor into chaos. His HUD flashed warnings he had never seen before. Neural interface interference. Unknown signal structure. Biological response detected, no match found. Evan stumbled back another step. Control, I am getting abnormal readings, he started. The egg cracked open for half a second. Not fully. Just a slit. A seam of blinding, impossible light. Inside wasn't an animal. It wasn't even matter in any form Evan could understand. It was pattern. Geometry. Movement without motion. Something that looked back at him without having eyes. And in that instant, every instrument in his suit shut down. Total blackout. No radio. No HUD. No external feed. Just Evan Cole standing in absolute darkness, staring at something that had just acknowledged him. Then, the light snapped off. The egg sealed itself again. Silence returned. But the chamber wasn't empty anymore. Because Evan wasn't alone. Somewhere behind him, deeper in the tunnel system, stone shifted. Slow. Heavy. Like something enormous had just decided it had been waiting long enough. Evan Cole didn't move for a full 10 seconds. His suit systems were still rebooting in fragments, patchy diagnostics flickering across his visor like dying stars. The tunnel around him had returned to normal darkness, but normal didn't feel like the right word anymore. Normal didn't usually include something that looked at you from inside an impossible egg and then shut down every piece of technology you were wearing. Control, Evan tried again. Only static answered. He forced himself to breathe steadily. In. Out. The suit regulated oxygen automatically, but panic had a way of making even simple systems feel unreliable. Step 1 of survival training, confirm environment. Step 2, establish communication. Step 3, exit if communication fails. He was already past step 3. Evan slowly turned his head toward the chamber exit. The tunnel stretched behind him like a wound cut into the earth, dark, uneven, wrong in a way he couldn't explain. His helmet lights flickered back to life in low-power mode, casting jittery cones of light across fractured rock. No movement. No sound. But the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied. Control, respond, Evan said again, louder. A burst of static crackled, and then, finally, a voice. Cole? We read you. Signal was unstable. Repeat last report. Relief hit him so hard it almost made him dizzy. He exhaled. I found an object. Non-geological. Possibly artificial, but not constructed by any known civilization. It reacted to my presence. There was a pause. Then a sharper voice cut in. Do not touch it again. Evan blinked. Already did. Another pause, longer this time. Then the command channel shifted tone completely. Mark the site. Extract immediately. That is a direct protocol order. He looked back at the chamber. The egg sat perfectly still again in the center of the room. Except now he couldn't shake the feeling that still was just a decision it was making for his benefit. I don't think I should leave it unattended, Evan said carefully. It's responsive. Possibly intelligent. Negative, Control snapped. You are not equipped to classify unknown pre-civilization artifacts. You are a contractor. You mark. You exit. A second voice joined in, lower, colder. Cole, listen carefully. Whatever you are seeing, it is not to be engaged. Not studied. Not transported. That last word stuck in Evan's mind. Transported. He looked at his glove. A faint scorch mark ran along the palm plating where he had touched the object. It wasn't burned. It was rewritten. The metal surface had changed microscopic structure, forming patterns that looked almost like veins. His suit senses still hadn't fully recovered. Understood, Evan said slowly. Beginning extraction. He turned, but before he could take a step, the tunnel lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then died. Total darkness swallowed the chamber. Control? Evan said sharply. No answer. Not even static this time. His suit switched to emergency illumination. A thin red beam cut forward, barely reaching the far wall. And that's when he saw it. The egg was gone. Evan froze. No, he whispered again, but quieter now. Different tone. He swept the light across the chamber. Empty. The central indentation where it had rested was still there, but the object itself had vanished completely. No debris. No fracture. No sign of movement. Just absence. His HUD suddenly rebooted. System restored. Remote link lost. Environmental mapping, degraded. Then a new alert flashed. Tracking signature detected behind subject. Evan spun around instantly. Nothing. Only the tunnel stretching into blackness. But his suit wasn't wrong. Because now there were marks on the ground. Faint impressions in the dust. Not footprints exactly. More like pressure points, places where something had briefly considered touching the earth. They led past him. Deeper into the tunnel system. Away from the chamber. Evan's breathing quickened. Control, I need immediate evac. Something moved, object is no longer contained. Silence. Then, Faintly, a distorted fragment of audio broke through his comm. No extraction. Repeat, no extraction. Then static swallowed it again. Evan stared at the ground markings. They were still forming. One after another. Like something invisible was walking just ahead of him, choosing where to press down. He backed away slowly. His boot hit something solid. He looked down. A second set of marks had appeared behind him. Facing the wrong direction. As if whatever had been in the chamber wasn't gone at all. It had simply decided not to stay where he could see it. Evan turned carefully. The tunnel behind him was empty. But the dust on the floor was no longer undisturbed. It was arranged. Not randomly. Not naturally. It formed a pattern, wide arcs circling outward from where he stood. Like something had paused behind him, and studied him. His suit issued a new alert. Proximity entity, unknown. Distance, 0.6 meters. Evan stopped breathing. Slowly, he raised his helmet light. Nothing was there. Yet the air felt warmer on his left side. Like something enormous had leaned in close enough to breathe. And then, a faint crack echoed from the direction of the chamber. Not loud. Just precise. Controlled. Deliberate. Like a door closing somewhere that didn't belong to this world. Evan took a step back. Then another. And for the first time since entering the excavation site, he stopped thinking like a contractor. He started thinking like someone trying not to be followed. Evan Cole told himself it was over. That was the only way he could keep his mind from breaking the shape of what had just happened. By the time extraction protocol finally kicked in, he was already back on the surface, standing in the harsh floodlights of the excavation perimeter. The night air outside the tunnel felt wrong in a different way, too open, too honest, too unconcerned with what had just been staring back at him from beneath the earth. No one asked too many questions. That was standard in black site contracts like this. If a contractor came back shaken, the official assumption was stress, hallucination, or exposure fatigue. Anything except the alternative. Anything except something was down there that shouldn't exist. A medic ran a quick scan over Evan's suit. Vitals stable, she said. Cortisol elevated. You should sleep. Evan didn't respond. His gloves were still clenched like he was holding onto something that wasn't there anymore. Where's the artifact? A supervisor asked casually, flipping through a tablet. Evan looked up. There was a pause before he answered. Gone. The supervisor didn't react. Just tapped something on the screen. Noted. File closed pending review. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Evan didn't remember the flight back. He remembered sitting in the transport pod, staring at his reflection in the glass. His helmet was off now, but he still felt like he was wearing it. Like something had left a residue behind his eyes. Every time he blinked, he saw that crack of light again. Not as memory. As imprint. When he finally reached his apartment building, the city felt unreal. Too bright. Too loud. Too full of people who had no idea the world underneath them had just changed its rules. He checked in, ignored the automated greetings, and went straight upstairs. The hallway was empty. Too empty. Even the air felt staged, like it was waiting for him to notice something. Evan unlocked his door. It opened normally. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. Inside, everything looked exactly as he had left it. Dishes in the sink. Jacket on the chair. Light from the street filtering through blinds. Normality, carefully preserved. Evan exhaled for the first time in hours. Then stopped. Because his door lock clicked again. From the inside. He froze. The sound was soft. Precise. Like a mechanism finishing a decision. Evan slowly turned toward the living room. Nothing looked different at first. But the air did. It was warmer near the center of the room. Not heat like a heater. Heat like presence. His apartment lights flickered once. Then stabilized. And there, sitting perfectly in the middle of his living room floor, was the egg. Evan's body went cold. No, he whispered. The object was bigger than before. Not dramatically. Just enough that his mind refused to accept it had been the same size underground. Its surface pulsed faintly under his apartment lighting, like it was adapting to a new environment. The glow inside wasn't random anymore. It had rhythm now. Steady. Familiar. Like it had learned something from him. Evan took one step back. Then another. The door behind him was still closed. He hadn't heard it open. He hadn't seen it enter. But it was here. Inside his home. Inside his space. Where nothing should have been able to pass without triggering every security system he owned. Security lock, Evan said sharply. Nothing responded. He checked his wrist console. All systems were green. Except motion detection, which showed nothing. No entry events. No breaches. No anomalies. Just him. Standing in a room with something that should not exist. The egg shifted slightly. Evan froze instantly. A crack of light appeared along its surface, same place as before, but deeper this time. More deliberate. Less like damage and more like intention. His apartment lights dimmed in response. Not flickered. Dimmed. Like something was negotiating power. Evan backed toward the wall. Okay, he whispered, voice tight. Okay. You're not in the tunnel anymore. The egg pulsed once. His wrist console suddenly warmed. A notification appeared without being triggered. Unknown link established. Evan's throat tightened. I didn't authorize any connection, he said. The egg pulsed again. And then, something touched his mind. Not a voice. Not sound. A recognition. A simple, undeniable transmission of meaning. You did not return it. Evan staggered backward hard enough to hit the wall. Pain shot through his shoulder. But it didn't matter. Because the message wasn't gone. It was still there. Not echoing. Not repeating. Just present. Like a thought that had always been his, only now he was noticing it. The egg cracked again. Just a fraction. Light spilled into the room, not illuminating it, but redefining it. Shadows stopped behaving correctly. Edges of furniture seemed uncertain about their own shape. Evan's breathing turned shallow. Control, he whispered instinctively. But there was no control here. Only silence. Then the egg spoke again. Not in words. In certainty. You opened the path. Evan shook his head. I didn't do anything. But even as he said it, he remembered. His glove on the surface. The pulse. The moment the suit shut down. The recognition. The chamber responding not as a place, but as a system. A system that had recorded him. Marked him. The egg pulsed again. And this time, the light filled the room completely. Evan couldn't move. Couldn't blink. Couldn't look away. And somewhere far outside his apartment, something enormous in the dark of the world shifted, as if it had finally found what it had been waiting for. And realized it had already been invited. The first sign that something else had noticed Evan Cole was not sound. It was absence. At 4:12 a.m., every electronic device in his apartment silently dropped into standby mode at the same time. No warning. No error logs. No flicker. Just a coordinated surrender of power. Evan stood in the middle of his living room, still staring at the egg. It no longer looked like an object that had entered his space. It looked like something that had always been there, and his memory had simply failed to include it until now. The light inside its shell pulsed slowly, almost lazily, as if it was no longer concerned with hiding. Then the windows went dark. Not broken. Not shattered. Darkened. As if the outside world had been painted over with something thicker than night. Evan turned toward the window. Nothing outside the glass moved. Not traffic. Not wind. Not even distant city lights. Just a uniform black horizon where a skyline should have been. What the hell, he whispered. The egg responded with a pulse. Not louder. Not brighter. Just closer. The first impact came from above. A deep, resonant hum rolled through the building structure. Not vibration, not sound, but something that made the bones of the apartment feel temporarily misaligned. Evan staggered slightly. His ceiling lights burst into a soft white glow without power input. Then stopped. Then reactivated in a different configuration entirely, forming a circular pattern above the egg. Like a spotlight system had been installed in reverse. Evan backed away slowly. Control, he tried again, even though he already knew the line was dead. Nothing answered. The egg pulsed once more. And then, footsteps. Not inside the apartment. Outside it. In the hallway. Slow. Even. Perfectly synchronized. Evan's entire body went rigid. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. The footsteps stopped at his door. No knocking followed. Just silence. A silence that felt deliberate. The handle turned. But not like a hand turning it. More like a mechanism deciding the door was no longer locked. The door opened. 3 figures stood in the hallway. They were human in outline only. Tall. Symmetrical. Clad in matte black material that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. No insignias. No visible equipment. No facial features beyond smooth, pale surfaces where eyes should have been. They didn't step inside immediately. They paused, as if waiting for confirmation that the room was correct. Evan took one step back. The egg pulsed sharply. The figures stopped. All three tilted their heads at the same exact angle. Perfect synchronization. Then one of them spoke. Not through air. Not through sound. Directly into the space of the room itself. Signature confirmed. Evan felt his stomach drop. Another figure shifted slightly. Bond established. The third one finally moved its head toward Evan. Host classification, human. Evan's mouth went dry. What are you? The figures did not answer immediately. Instead, the egg pulsed again. And the room reacted. The air temperature dropped sharply. The walls seemed to stretch inward by a fraction of perception. The figures stepped forward, just one step each. And stopped again. All at once. As if something had issued a limit they could not cross. The lead figure spoke again. "IT has imprinted." Evan's voice cracked slightly. "It? You mean the thing in the egg?" The moment he said it, the egg responded violently. A pulse so strong it shattered every glass surface in the apartment without producing sound. Not breaking, just disassembling their structure at a molecular level before they could fall. Evan flinched. The figures did not. They remained perfectly still. Then, something unexpected happened. One of them took a half step backward. A retreat. The first sign of hesitation. The lead figure turned slightly toward the egg. Unstable phase. Another responded instantly. No. Stabilized phase. Host link complete. The third one finally spoke again. "IT has chosen." Evan shook his head. "Chosen? I didn't agree to anything." The lead figure finally turned fully toward him. For the first time, Evan felt something like attention. Not curiosity. Assessment. "Consent not required," it said. The words were flat. Final. The egg pulsed again. But softer this time. Almost calm. As if it understood the conversation and found it unimportant. Evan's chest tightened. "Get it out of my apartment." That was the wrong thing to say. The moment the words left his mouth, the egg brightened. The figures in the hallway reacted instantly, each one taking a synchronized step backward. Not fear. Distance control. Containment. The lead figure raised a hand slightly. Warning, host emotional instability detected. Evan laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "You think I'm the unstable one here?" The egg pulsed again. The room flickered. And for a fraction of a second, Evan saw something beyond the apartment. Not a place. A vast structure of lead darkness and light, like a living geometry stretching far beyond human comprehension. Then it vanished. The egg dimmed. The figures stabilized. The lead one spoke again, slower now. "The entity has established a bridge state." Evan swallowed. Bridge to what? No answer. Instead, all three figures turned their attention to the egg in unison. And for the first time since they arrived, they all stepped back together. One more synchronized retreat. The lead figure's voice dropped slightly. "Containment protocols invalid." A pause. Then. "Withdrawal advised." Evan blinked. "You're leaving?" The figures did not respond to him. Only to each other. "Do not interfere with host. Do not disrupt imprint. Observation only." Then they turned toward the door. Not rushed. Not alarmed. Just, resolved. The lead figure paused at the threshold. Its head tilted slightly toward Evan one last time. "You are the first." Evan's throat tightened. First what? But the figure was already gone. All three vanished into the hallway darkness without sound. The door closed behind them on its own. Click. Locked. Evan stood alone again. Except he wasn't. Because behind him, the egg pulsed softly. And this time, it felt like approval. The apartment did not return to normal after the hunters left. It redefined what normal meant. Evan Cole stood in the center of his living room for a long time after the door locked itself again. He didn't try it. Didn't approach it. Something about the way it had closed felt final, not mechanical. Like the room had decided there were no more entries allowed tonight. The egg sat where it had always been. But now it no longer felt like an object occupying space. It felt like the reason the space existed. The glow inside its shell pulsed at a steady rhythm, slower than before, calmer. Almost, settled. Like a heartbeat that had stopped pretending to be unfamiliar. Evan's wrist console was still active, but only partially. Every system ran in degraded mode. Every diagnostic looped back into the same unreadable result. Unknown entity link active. No termination path available. Host status, undefined. He stared at it until the word stopped meaning anything. Then he turned his attention back to the egg. "You did this," he whispered. No response came in words. But the air in the room shifted slightly, like something had acknowledged him without needing to speak. Evan swallowed hard. "What are you?" The egg pulsed once. And this time, it was different. Not a reaction. An answer. The light inside the shell intensified, but not outwardly. It didn't brighten the room. It brightened perception. Evan felt it behind his eyes first, then in his chest, then everywhere at once. The edges of reality around him softened. The apartment was still there, but it was no longer the only version of it. For a split second, he saw the room from above. Then from below. Then from somewhere that had no direction at all. And in each perspective, the egg remained perfectly centered. Anchored. Like it was the only fixed point in something that refused to stay still. Evan staggered slightly. "Stop," he muttered, gripping the edge of the couch. "Whatever you're doing, stop." The egg pulsed again. And the apartment listened. The flickering distortion stabilized. The pressure in his head eased. But the presence did not leave. Instead, it focused. Directly on him. A voice formed, not in sound, but in structure. Not inside his mind. Inside reality itself. "You are the first human it chose." Evan froze. That sentence again. But now it wasn't coming from the hunters. It wasn't memory. It wasn't hallucination. It was now. He stepped back instinctively. "I didn't choose anything." The egg pulsed gently. And the voice continued. "Choice was not required." Evan shook his head. "That's not how anything works." A pause. Then. "You opened the path." Images surfaced without warning. Not visions he created. Records. The excavation chamber. The crack of light. The moment his glove touched the surface. But now he saw it differently. Not as contact. As activation. The egg had not been discovered. It had been responded to. Evan's breath quickened. "No. I didn't activate anything. I was just doing my job." The voice did not argue. It simply expanded. Observation, human action consistent with keying sequence. Evan felt his stomach drop. Keying sequence. The egg pulsed again. And suddenly the floor beneath him felt less solid. Not collapsing. Just, no longer confident in being floor. He stepped back quickly. The egg brightened slightly. The instability stopped. It was regulating him. That realization hit harder than anything else. "You're controlling this," he whispered. No denial. No confirmation. Just presence. The light shifted again. And this time, Evan saw it clearly. Not inside the egg. Inside the world around it. A vast lattice of intersecting patterns, like invisible architecture layered over everything he had ever known. Streets. Buildings. Even space beyond the atmosphere. All of it threaded through by something he could not name. And the egg was one of those threads. No. Not a thread. A node. A point where everything intersected and changed direction. Evan stumbled back until he hit the wall. His voice came out hoarse. "What is happening to me?" The answer came instantly. Imprint complete, host integration initiated. His wrist console flashed violently. Warning, neural alignment detected. Warning, external coherence transfer active. Warning, subject becoming interface node. Evan ripped his hand away from the console like it had burned him. "I am not an interface," he said sharply. The egg pulsed. And for the first time, something almost like reassurance passed through the room. Not comfort. Understanding. "You are a bridge state." Evan laughed once, short, disbelieving, edged with panic. "Between what and what?" The answer came slowly. As if the concept itself had to be assembled in real time. Between what exists. And what awaits recognition. The air in the room shifted again. But not threateningly. Like something enormous had leaned closer, not to invade, but to observe more clearly. Evan looked at the egg. "It followed me home," he said quietly. The pulse responded. Yes. Not as word. As agreement. Outside the apartment, the world remained still. But somewhere far beyond human perception, something that had been dormant for an uncountable span of time registered a change. A new connection. A new observer point. A human node capable of carrying signal across thresholds that were never meant to be crossed. And for the first time in its existence, it adjusted its expectation of Earth. Inside the apartment, Evan Cole stood frozen as the egg's light softened into a steady, stable glow. Not sleeping. Not hatching. Waiting. The voice returned one final time. Not louder. Not closer. Just final. Observation phase, active. Earth status, updated. Evan exhaled slowly. Because now he understood the truth that mattered most. The hunters hadn't come to take it away. They had come to make sure it didn't get disturbed. And they were already too late. The egg pulsed once more. Gentle. Patient. Like it had all the time in the universe. And Evan realized, with a sinking certainty, that whatever had followed him home had never been the end of the story. It was only the beginning.